Blessings upon you today. Welcome to our cornerstone word for the week. I'm Pastor Augustus T. Curry. As always, it's a joy, a delight, and honor to share with you in the study of the word. It's our weekly study. We use the curriculum as set forth by the International Sunday School curriculum study, and we also incorporate our weekly Bible study as well. We're beginning a new unit this week entitled Jesus, the Heir of David. Jesus, the Heir of David, the H-E-I-R of David. All of that centers around the ideal of how important it was in the culture and time of the text that we'll be looking at, how important family history was for the children of Israel, the children of God. They believed and held, and it was prophesied that it would be the seed of David that would be the promised king to come. David himself was great king of Israel, but there was one coming after him. And so our passages of scripture today are found in the book of Ruth, that's in the Old Testament, and then the Gospel of St. Luke, that's in the New Testament. And it deals with part of the genealogy of Jesus. And so we'll look at the importance of that and the significance of it today, for us today. Now, this passage in Ruth chapter 4, verses 9 through 17, it of course deals with, to a large part, a woman by the name of Naomi. Naomi married a gentleman who was a righteous man from all accounts, a child of God, but she was from another land, considered a foreigner, a different culture, and a different belief system. But when she meets the one who's to become her husband, and they marry, she takes on his God, the God of Israel, and is faithful in that way, in a great way. And however, they go on. They have two sons, but then the gentleman that she married, he passes away. He dies. And so she's left with her two sons and the wives that they married. So she's got two sons, two daughter-in-laws, even after her husband passes away. But then her two sons also pass away. So it's now her and her two daughter-in-laws. And she tells the daughter-in-laws, they're relatively young, they're still able to have children. They've not had any up to this point. And she tells them, well, you all going back to my homeland, or go to a place where you have a better chance of meeting someone new and going on with your life. One daughter-in-law takes her up on it, goes on back, and but there's another daughter-in-law that she has, one by the name of Ruth, whose name the book is entitled there in the Old Testament, the book of Ruth. Ruth says, no, I want to stay with you. You've been kind to me. You raised your son. He was a good husband to me. I want to stay with you. But Naomi insists, no, going back, I appreciate the love. You've been good to me. And so going back, I don't want to hold you back. But then Ruth insists, no, I'm going to stay with you. Where you go, I'll go. Where you set up tent, I'll set up tent. Your God will be my God. It's an interesting love story in the book of Ruth. Interesting story of love and faith. And we see how it will give us a sneak preview of that which is to come with Christ our Savior in the New Testament. And so here we have this widow, Naomi, her foreign-born daughter-in-law, Ruth. They're facing an uncertain future. Again, the death of Naomi's husband, the death of her two sons, and the death of Ruth's husband. But it's Ruth's character that wins the favor of Boaz. Boaz is a gentleman who we will come to see was a wealthy relative of Naomi. And God's going to use him to be a blessing to them. Let's pick up on it in the fourth chapter of Ruth. Ruth chapter 4, beginning with verse 9. And it says, And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Kilion's. It's spelled CH, but it's pronounced Ka, not Cha. Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Elimelech is the one who was married to Naomi, and then Kilion and Mahlon were the two sons that they had. And so it says, Boaz says unto the elders and to all the people that were witnesses there, that I am buying back all that they had lost. I'm buying back all they had lost, and I'm going to raise up a seed. I'm going to marry Ruth and raise up a seed in honor of Mahlon. Again, it was considered an honorable thing at that time for a man whose brother or very close kinsman, if they had passed, to take up their wife, help raise their family. And it is so that Boaz fell in love with Ruth. And so he wanted to do this for Ruth. And he so appreciated Naomi, he wanted to do that for Naomi as well. He wanted to be their kinsman redeemer. Now, technically, a kinsman redeemer was one who's very close to a family, who pays a burden, a debt, a responsibility that the family member cannot pay on their own. He steps in and pays it for them. He redeems it. You've seen a coupon. It says at the bottom, redeem by a certain date. Well, at this point in the life of Israel, property was so important as it is today. As you see on the news and all the fighting going on in Israel, what's it over? To a large extent, land. And so even way back then, thousands of years ago, it was the practice of Israel that land was not to be sold outside of the family, outside of the clan, outside of their people. If it was sold more so as a lease, if you will, because the family always had the authority to come back and buy the land back again. And so here, Boaz is going to step in. He's going to buy everything they lost back. And one thing about this particular episode is that there actually was another kinsman closer to Naomi than Boaz was. And Boaz apparently is a man of wisdom as well as integrity. And so he does go to that individual in front of witnesses. That's what we pick up on here in verse 9 of chapter 4 and verse 10, chapter 3, and chapter 4, verse 9. I say chapter 3 because when we get to St. Luke, we'll be looking at chapter 3 in St. Luke, but it's chapter 4 in Ruth. And we pick up on that here, but Boaz is so in love with Ruth, he says to the man, he says, listen, I know you're first in line. And so I just want you to be aware, I do know you have the opportunity to redeem the land and Naomi and so forth. The man said, yeah, well, I'll be glad to do that. And then he says, well, also, wait a minute. He says, well, it's a package deal. You also have to take Ruth on as well, her faithful daughter-in-law, and marry her. The man says, well, I can't go through with all of that. And that's how Boaz steps in and makes the deal again in front of these elders and in front of these witnesses. And so it's a done deal, if you will. Boaz is to redeem Naomi's land holdings and to marry Ruth. And as we look on, the Bible says, verse 10, moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day. And so again, Boaz is so in love with Ruth, he's going to marry her, and prayerfully she will conceive, they'll have a son, and Naomi's lineage and her son's lineage with Ruth will live on. And so it's interesting that this first child that would be born to Boaz and Ruth would literally be raised as Mahlon's child. That's the gentleman who passed. That's the son of Naomi. That's the husband of Ruth that passed. Again, so that the dead man's name would be maintained, and so that what you call posterity would continue on. What a great sign of faith it is on the part of all three of these individuals, Naomi, and then Ruth, and then Boaz. Verse 11, and all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And so they take this lineage even back further, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And so these witnesses bear witness of what is taking place. They stamp their approval upon it, and in fact give their blessings to what has taken and is to take place. Again, the genealogy of one was so important at that time, and even we'll see in the Gospel of St. Luke chapter 3, it was so important. People wanted to know how could Jesus lay claim of being King of all Israel and King of Kings. And so it was important for the writer of the Gospel of Luke, the recorder, to note the genealogy of Jesus back all the way to David. How does that tie into what we're studying here in Ruth? Well, eventually, Boaz and Ruth have a son. The Bible says the Lord blesses her to conceive. I like that because, again, they apparently had been married. She apparently had been married some 10 years to the first husband before he passed, and she had not conceived. But the Bible here says that the Lord blesses her to conceive. It says, verse 12, let the house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah. That's another account back in Genesis. Um, Phares was born under different circumstances, uh, but uh, uh, but similar in one light. It says, "Of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman." And so again, this is taking the lineage even back further, all the way back to Genesis. When you read Genesis chapter 38, um, Tamar, she was entitled to what you call a Levirate marriage. Levirate marriage, not Levite, but Levirate. Levirate marriage, again, where her husband died. Genesis chapter 38, verse 8. But uh, Tamar was able uh, to find um, another who would step in as a redeemer, and Phares was conceived. And so that's mentioned in this text to say it's different, but in one light similar. Different again because it was different circumstances, but similar in that someone would step in to pick up where someone else had left off. We see where the Lord blesses, verses 13 through 17. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, again, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare her son. Again, first marriage, 10 years. You can pick that up in Ruth chapter 1, verse 4. But no child came forth as a result. But here the Bible said the Lord gave her conception. Verse 14, and the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which have not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. Notice the significance of that. The women said unto Naomi, you have to read Ruth chapter 1, where Ruth declares, where Naomi declares she's a bitter woman. She felt deserted. Again, her husband died. And then the two sons she had left, they died. And then one of the daughter-in-laws left her, which she suggested that she should do. And so she felt deserted, despondent, discouraged. And surely the people there knew that. But here, look how God has turned things around by verse 14. And now the women say unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which have not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. You may be catching on. I keep using that term that's repeated in the Bible, kinsman. Kinsman. We've got another kinsman redeemer coming on. He's going to pay a debt for us that we could not pay for ourselves. And so the women of the town had previously witnessed Naomi's heartbreaking return to Bethlehem. Again, Ruth chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, but now they're witnessing something different. She's witnessing one who has gone from bitterness to true blessedness, from mourning to dancing. And it says, verse 15, and he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life. Talking about the grandson of Naomi, Ruth's son. He shall be, and his seed that will come forth, and he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, have borne him. And so they knew of Naomi's background, how she had lost 2 sons. He said, yeah, you lost 2, the women say, but you got a daughter-in-law which loves you better than 7 sons could. And your daughter-in-law have borne him. Verses 16 and 17, and Naomi took the child. This is the grandmother taking the grandbaby now, Ruth's baby, and laid it in her bosom. She's so happy, she's so elated, and became nurse unto it. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. What you say? The father of Jesse, the father of David? So that means that this child is going to be the grandfather of David. And again, Jews would be looking for, even up to the time of Jesus, one who would be the seed of David, a son, eventual son of David, who would be king not only of Israel, but king of kings and Lord of lords. And so 1,000 years passed between the events recorded in Ruth and then the events recorded in the Gospel of St. Luke at Jesus' birth. And so when you switch over to Luke chapter 3, verse 23, we look at it in the context of the prophecy being that an everlasting kingdom would be established. That's 2 Samuel chapter 7. And here in Luke chapter 3, verse 23, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli. And so it talks about Jesus being 30. It was held at that time, Old Testament times leading up to that time, that the man had to be 30 in many circumstances to be a priest, to be one of service, special service in the tabernacles. And so it says now Jesus is of the age 30 and being the son of Joseph, as was supposed. And so Luke recognizes he's not merely the son of Joseph, he's the son of God, but it says the son of Joseph as supposed. And then a lineage will be given through Joseph. Now, these lineages that are given of Jesus in the New Testament, they may be different in Matthew as they are in Luke. Several things I could say about that. Suffice it to say that some of these lineages would trace the lineage through Mary, his mother, and then another gospel writer will trace it through Joseph the father. And then some of the lineages skip over certain generations. So they pick out certain ones, and some of them will be traced back through the father, some through the mother in the same lineage. And so it picks up on a number of different people between Jesus going back to David. You perhaps have heard it said that Jesus came down through 42 generations. I've heard people say that. It's not exactly correct. They get that because they just count the number of people that are mentioned in some of these genealogies. They say, well, it adds up to 42. So people, he came down from 42 generations. No, as I said before, some names are left out and what have you. And so it's, and you know it's got to be a lot more than 42 generations because of the period of time between David and Jesus. Sometimes people can hear a thing over and over, even in a church setting that's not necessarily accurate, but they hear it over and over. And so they think that it is a historical fact, but that's not the case. All right, and so Luke, he wants to trace back the lineage of Jesus to David, and he does it through Joseph. Again, Matthew does it through Mary, and again, it's not intended to be a complete account of each family generation, but to give us a general genealogy, if you will. And Luke is showing the lineage relationship that was to be a key to Jesus being able to fulfill the promise that God made to David. I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. Verse 32, which was the son of Jesse, which was the son of Obed, which was the son of Booz, which was the son of Salmon, which was the son of Naasson. Again, it's all tracing the lineage of Jesus back to that of David. And so it notes for us that the decisions that we make don't just affect us, but it affects those who are coming after us. I hear some people say they're going to spend all they have and all that. I said, well, you would think you would want your children to be on a higher level, not only spiritually, but financially, generational wealth. And so we've got to think more about those who are coming on behind us. And that's so important. We finally see Ruth, Naomi, and the story of Boaz being great encouragement as to what happens when you stand out on faith. When you stand up on faith and step out on faith, God's promises are surely to bless you. Again, it was not a foregone conclusion that a widowed woman, let alone two widowed women, and one being a foreigner, that's Naomi and Ruth, who was a foreigner still, technically, being able to survive with no sons, but God turned it into their favor, and the blessing continued beyond even what Boaz, Ruth, and Naomi could experience for themselves. He blessed their future seed by way of David, and all the way to Jesus, the promised king. You do know that Boaz, Ruth, Naomi could never have imagined how their faithfulness would end up influencing the world, generations to come. Through all of that, Jesus would be born, the Savior of the world. And so not only would the great King David come from it, but the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. What an amazing study for us and our consideration at this time of Thanksgiving leading on into the Christmas season. I pray you've been blessed by that. Next week, if you can, read in advance our next study. It'll be looking at 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel chapter 7. Just go ahead and look at verses 1 through 17. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 17. And we'll look at a great promise of God. And we'll look at how we'll look at God's promise of king that will come, and you're going to be blessed by it. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 17. May the Lord bless you and keep you real good. And again, hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and look forward to seeing you Sunday morning in worship. here at Cornerstone, 9 a.m. If you can be here in person, 640 Ebenezer Church Road. If not, certainly tune in to our YouTube channel and our Facebook media page, and you'll be blessed by it. May the Lord bless you and keep you real good. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'm Pastor A.T. Curry. Take care.